Bioshock is a franchise that sparks only civil, friendly conversation between gamers. Yeah, let's go with that. So today I'm going to be adding to it by ranking the Bioshock games from the worst to the best. I'm not going to be spoiling any of the stories in case people have not played them, and I'm going to be ranking the DLCs as their own games, since they're basically expansions. I'll have to play a balancing act between games being good for a first-time playthrough and games being good for repeat playthroughs. For Bioshock, I'll probably favor a first-time playthrough a little bit more in this ranking. Other than that, there's no rules. In very last place, it's not even close, it's Bioshock Infinite Burial at Sea Part 2. With most Bioshock games, there's something redeeming, but I just did not like anything about this game. Most people cite the story being the bad part about the game, and I will agree there. The whole point of this DLC was trying to connect Bioshock Infinite to Bioshock 1. Something I just don't see the point to. It undermines Bioshock 1's story, it's completely unnecessary, why did you do this? Without spoiling anything, the story is just bad on top of that, so it doesn't help itself. But the more egregious thing to me is just that I hated the gameplay. They turned Bioshock into a stealth game. Why? I don't know. I personally myself don't like stealth games, but that's not to say stealth games can't be good. Games like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid exist. The older Splinter Cell games are classics, and Metal Gear Solid is Metal Gear Solid. So then why did they decide to try to turn this into a stealth game? It's not even good stealth. It's the kind of stealth where you just crouch by everyone or shoot them with crossbows. The AI is incredibly stupid and can be broken immediately, and the game is just very easy. Now, it's supposed to feel good sneaking into a house and sneaking out while no one sees you, you feel like a ninja. But the map layouts are incredibly linear, so it just feels like you're skipping parts of the game instead of doing that. Mostly because I was just trying to get this game out of the way, I wasn't having fun. Now, yes, you were having to stealth because Elizabeth is not as strong as Booker, but even this makes no sense. At least not in the way it's implemented. It makes sense for her not to be as strong. You will find more weapons, but they will have more recoil, the animations will be more laborious, and the reloading will be slower, which is actually pretty cool. The problem I have, though, is that the weapons are weaker and have shallower mag sizes. That makes no sense. A gun doesn't suddenly get weaker because somebody else that's weaker is holding it. Bioshock was all about player choice, and now it's just forced stealth. It sucks. Genuinely, I have nothing good to say about this. Let's move on. In second to last place, it's Bioshock Infinite.
Hallelujah.
It's a good shooter with a few things that really drag it down. The first and most obvious is the story. Whenever you say anything negative about the story, you get a bunch of people yelling at you saying that you're too stupid to understand it. Or maybe people understand it and it's just not that good. Don't be that guy. It's just annoying. Same goes for the other people that are tearing down Bioshock. Don't insult people because they like Bioshock Infinite. That's also annoying. Anyway, the second half of Bioshock Infinite's story feels like it's changing its own rules and kind of is just mush in my head. It's hard to remember because a lot of it doesn't mean anything. The ending's twist makes sense, but it just wasn't anywhere near as good as the first two games. And by near as good, I mean I didn't care for it at all, and I know a lot of other people didn't either. Infinite gets a mixed reception, and I feel like Bioshock Infinite's place on this list is going to shift heavily depending on who you ask. As for the gameplay, it's a pretty good linear first-person shooter, with one really big downside. You can only carry 2 weapons. Why? This limitation really hampers the game, and I'm surprised there's not a mod to fix it. If you could carry as many games as you want, the game would instantly become a million times better. But no, this one boneheaded decision really drags it down. Because other than that, it's a pretty decent linear first-person shooter. It's good, I wouldn't say great, even if you could carry as many weapons as you want, but it's definitely a good shooter. The problem is, it just doesn't really play like the other Bioshock games. At least not in map design. It's a lot more linear than the older Bioshock games. This isn't to say it's just invisible hallway corridors, but it's closer to that than how Bioshock used to be. Funny enough, I find Bioshock Infinite to be a better sequel to Prey 2006 and Prey 2017 to be a better sequel to Bioshock 1. This list from here on out becomes really difficult to make. Here's where I have to judge whether a game is better for its first-time playthrough or repeat playthroughs. And I am factoring in first-time playthroughs a little more. and because of that, I'll have to put Bioshock 2 here. Gameplay-wise, it is absolutely better than Bioshock 1. They took all that stuff they had learned from the first game and improved on it. But I don't think the story is quite as good, and at this point you're already well aware of what Rapture is. It doesn't have that shock value of being introduced to Rapture. Bioshock 2 is definitely a game that you'll appreciate more within time, especially after you've played all of the Bioshock games, but I think for right now I'm gonna place this right here. Next up is Bioshock Infinite Burial at Sea Part 1. That splicer doesn't exist anymore. I actually really like what they did here. The story has a really big plot hole, but other than that, it's fine. The gameplay is really why I enjoyed this DLC. They effectively took all of the improvements they made to the gunplay of Bioshock Infinite and shoved it into Bioshock 1, while still being in Bioshock Infinite's engine. And Rapture has never looked this good. Partially because Rapture hasn't collapsed yet. This DLC happens before the fall of Rapture, and that's awesome. But even when you do get to a section that's fallen apart, the gunplay stands out, and the map design is back. Maps generally have one center hub, and then you can branch off and explore at your own content. I found the pacing of this DLC to be a lot better than Infinite. Had Bioshock Infinite been like this, but in Colombia, it might be the best Bioshock game, but we'll never know. For now, I would definitely recommend this DLC. It's pretty fun. Before I crown second and first place, I want to give a huge thanks to everyone that subscribed. I'm pretty close to 250k, so if you want to help out, consider subscribing. I post every Friday, and if you don't want to wait to see me post on Friday, then consider being a YouTube member like these guys over here. They get to see my videos as soon as I finish them. All right, moving on to second place. That goes to Bioshock 1.
I chose Rapture. City where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, Rapture can become your city as well.
Bioshock 1 has definitely aged on the combat side. It is a little clunky, especially since you have to swap the plasmids and swap back your guns every time you want to use them. With that said, I don't think it's clunky enough to not enjoy. And it's really hard to beat that first introduction to Rapture. And the main plot twist stuck in my head 17 years later. Bioshock 1 is a certified classic for a reason. So then why is it in second place? That's because I think the best Bioshock game is Bioshock 2's DLC, Minerva's Den. This took everything we had learned from Bioshock 1 and Bioshock 2. It has the smoother combat of the second game made even more polished. It's got arguably the best map design out of any of the Bioshock games, not being too overbearing, but still giving you a lot of room to explore at your own pace. But most importantly, despite being in this fantastical city under the ocean, it has probably the most grounded story out of them all. The characters in this DLC are incredibly relatable, and the story is very sad. But it's not sad in a way that just makes you upset, it feels like a proper story. Without spoiling anything, all I can say is go play this DLC. And there you have it. Those are the Bioshock games ranked from the worst to the best. I streamed all these games, so if you want to join me over on Twitch, it's linked in the bottom right. Go check me out. There's other videos on screen if you want to watch some of the other stuff. Feel free to give me your list down below. Be nice, don't argue, don't yell at people. Don't yell at me either, I do read the comments. Politely, tell me what you think, and I'll see you next video.